Do pyramids have any spiritual significance? Pyramids.
You are neither a pharaoh nor are you dead. So, nobody is going to build a pyramid for you. Do pyramids have any significance? These Egyptians, over 4,500 to 5,000 years ago, they started building this. Pyramids is what you have heard about, mainly because it is always the Westerners who write books. Generally, the Eastern people, they see something, if it overwhelms them, they just shut up, they don't say anything. But it's a Western mind. The moment they see something, they have to write a book on it. There are pluses and minuses to this. Lots of minuses, but lots of pluses. Otherwise, you wouldn't have heard about the pyramids unless you went there. Because it's the Western minds which generally talked about it, they only talked about the pyramids of Egypt because they're very death-oriented. It is because of this, the obsession with pleasure. Death and pleasure are very directly connected. People always think life and pleasure are connected. No, death and pleasure are very directly connected. If you are very alive, if you become alive fully, I know the Eastern minds have also absorbed this in a horribly distorted way. But right now, if you told your friend or your relative, I'm going to the ashram for 3 days, they would become very kind towards you and ask, why, what went wrong? Something must be wrong with your life. You're going to the ashram to heal a wound, to solace yourself. Something must be really wrong with your life, or you must be too old for life. Otherwise, why would you go to an ashram? So this has crept into this culture also. Essentially, if you are alive only in parts, or if you're partially alive, to be partially alive is a terrible torture. Many of you have been through these science classes. I'm sure you opened up frogs and cockroaches, did you? They were nice, lively beings, but you opened them up because you wanted to find their heart and liver and kidney. Half alive. Being half alive is torture. Have you seen this? Always being half alive is torture. This is the torture that a large segment of humanity is going through right now because they're half alive. Only one part of them has become alive. Only their physicality and mentality has become alive. The rest of it is yet to become alive. Half-alive people will suffer everything. They will suffer ignorance, they will suffer education, they will suffer poverty, they will suffer affluence, they will suffer being alone, they will suffer being in a relationship. If they are not married, they suffer. If they're married, they if they don't have children, they suffer that. As if children, if they are there, they can come and bite you. They do. No children, what are you suffering? But that also they suffer. Just show me one thing that human beings are not suffering right now. Just show me one aspect of life that human beings are not suffering right now. They're suffering just about anything, not just life. They're even suffering death before it happens. See, he's thinking of building a pyramid for himself. That which is and that which is not, everything they suffer. This is not. You are not suffering loneliness, you are not suffering company, you are not suffering money, you are not suffering poverty. What you're suffering is, you're half alive. You're desperately trying to make yourself fully alive through money, through drink, through sex, through going on a trek, coming to the ashram. In so many ways, you're somehow trying to make yourself fully alive, which is yet to happen fully. Here and there you feel a burst of aliveness, but again it ebbs down. So, when people are constantly half alive, pleasure becomes an important part of your life, very important part of your life. Without it, you cannot exist. Pleasure becomes paramount in your life when you're only half alive, when physicality is all that you know. Pleasure becomes of immense importance in your life. If you become fully alive, you will become so blissful, joyful, ecstatic without reason, bursts of ecstasy within you without any reason. It's almost embarrassing. Now, the thought of pleasure just evaporates. Looking for a drink, looking for some kind of pleasurable thing just evaporates out of your mind because you're fully alive. When you're fully alive, pleasure disappears. When you're half dead, pleasure is an important thing. When half of you is buried in the grave, to have pleasure becomes extremely important. Graves have their own problems, you know. Some time ago I told you, there is no problem in the grave. But graves have their own problems because after I went into these pyramids and saw, just recently, you know, I went into these Egyptian pyramids and saw graves have their own heavy problems. Mrs. Peabody, okay with the name? Mrs. Peabody was a hypochondriac, all the time worried about that something, some ailment is catching up with her. So she bothered her physician so badly, all the time, every day she comes up with a new complaint. And the doctor knew she's making it up all the time because there is no other way. If nobody pays attention, if nobody touches you and sees every day, you think you're going to die. So the doctor just started giving her aspirin under different names. You know, there are many companies. Every day a new prescription, same aspirin, new prescription. And she would feel better, tomorrow she comes up with a new problem. One day she came and said, I have chest pain. Doctor gave her aspirin. That evening she died. This was real. The doctor felt very bad. He just assumed that she is still making it up. 3 days later, the doctor died. Not because of this, he just died. Everybody dies, you know. A day this way or that way. And it so happened, they found him a plot, a grave plot, right next to Mrs. Peabody's. And he was buried. And there he heard a knock on his coffin. He said, who's that? I said, why, doctor? It is me, Mrs. Peabody. Do you have something for worms? this is real. So, just to dodge the worms, the trouble that the Egyptians took is unbelievable. You heard of the mummies? They took the liver out and put it in a can of something, they took the heart out and put it in another pot, they put different parts of the body, and then they wrapped this up and wrapped this up in so many different ways, an elaborate process. And then this building, there are over 3 million stones, each one of them weighing over 20 to 25 tons in one of the largest pyramids that are there. And it's a fabulous engineering feat, no question about it. Fabulous, fabulous engineering feat. We have to marvel at their engineering skills. But about their knowledge about afterlife, there's nothing much to say. But the most important thing in Egypt is not the pyramids, it is the fabulous temples that they built. They built some of the most magnificent temples on this planet, the largest and the most magnificent. You won't see anything like that in India. Most of them were built for sun god and certain goddesses. The sun god in Egypt is referred to as Ra. What do you call sun? There are many names, Ravi. And today, most of the world's history was written by the English, the British. Generally, either history was written by the conquering generals or by the conquering priests. Both of them are vested interests. There's a whole parallel line of history written by the French. French historians wrote history, which is barely read in the world. All our textbooks, the Indian textbooks, are 100% by the British authors. So these people write a certain kind of history, which is the history of the generals and the priests. But the Egyptian culture is all about temples, huge. Somebody worships a pyramid, which is a place of death. So they are very death-oriented. So when they saw the temples full of life, music, dance, revelry, life, they didn't like it. It looked most irreligious to them. They wanted to pull down the temples, but these were too massive, massive. Massive means you would not imagine buildings like that. I would like a meditation hall like that, but the Egyptian temples are truly massive, truly massive. The Karnak temple, which is one of the well-preserved lot, which is over 4,600 years old, is something like, I may not be exact on this, I would say it is something like 20 times the Rameshwaram temple that we have, which is one of the largest temples we have. That's how large it is. And in terms of its height, it is running into, really fabulous heights. Above all, what kind of devotion must have driven these people 4 millenniums ago to handle rocks like this? Some of these pylons which they have made, which have made them stand up, which have been transported hundreds of kilometers down the river Nile and erected, They are stones which weigh over 400 to 500 tons, running to 27 meters tall. What kind of devotion must have driven these people to do this kind of work? No machines, no trucks, no cranes, just human beings. It takes phenomenal sense of devotion and sense of purpose for anybody to do this. And today French historians are writing that Egyptian culture was connected with the Vedic culture 7,000 years ago. And the builders went from here, from this land. This you can see in Baalbek temple in Lebanon, which is once again about 4,200 years old. Once again, it's a fabulous, fabulous feat. They don't have any granite in the area, so they brought it from Egypt. They transported it across what is now Suez Canal, and they brought it up through Syria and climbed up the mountains, which is over 350 to 360 kilometers of climb on the mountain, and they put it up there, a huge temple, a Phoenician temple which was built almost 4,200 years ago. And here you will see lotuses hanging from the ceiling. A lotus in Lebanon, there is no such possibility because these are Indian sculptors. So there is history in Lebanon which clearly says Indian elephants, Indian labor and Indian sculptors came and worked here. And most amazing thing for me was, I saw a 16-pointed stone. Even today when we do the Guru Puja is essentially, in the yogic parlance, it is known as Shodashopachara. That means 16 ways of treating a guru. That's what Guru Puja is. So usually we have a Guru Puja stone which we still don't have in the ashram because of whatever. We're still putting up the stones, the standing ones. This 16-pointed Guru Puja stone, which is prepared traditionally in a certain way, is essentially from the yogic culture. It cannot come from anywhere else. You will see a proper Guru Puja stone with all the necessary symbols and everything in Lebanon, which is over 4,000 years old. So today, lot of French historians have published many aspects of history. So pyramids are just one aspect, but they have become very popular because of very death-oriented people. The temples of Egypt should have been celebrated. And the defacement of these temples, who did such a crime? Even a caveman, if he walks into this temple, he cannot help being overwhelmed. The columns are standing 27 meters tall. Hundreds of them, not one or two. Even if a caveman without any sense of aesthetics walked into this place, he cannot help being overwhelmed. You don't need to be an artist. You don't need to be a connoisseur of art. The crudest human being, if he walks in, he will be overwhelmed by what's been done there. Nobody can miss it. This is the way to build a temple, that nobody can miss it. Temple is not for one specialized sadhaka, that nobody should be able to miss it. That's how overwhelming it should be. And the structure and the ambience of that is as important as the energy of that place, because otherwise people will miss it. They built the right kind of temple as a temple should be built. But these people who defaced the temples, they wrote the history and they talked only about the pyramids. That was fascinating for them. This they wanted to demolish. They would have raised it to ground if they could, but it was too much work, they couldn't do it. Otherwise they would have just finished it. So pyramids are just one foolish effort towards immortality. We have no such problems in India. We have no longing for immortality. Our whole effort is to end it. Our whole effort is to end the cycle of birth and death. Mukti is the attitude, nirvana is the attitude, moksha is the attitude. That's the goal. Immortality is not the goal. So, I have fabulous things to say about Egyptian engineering, but nothing to say about Egyptian knowledge of the beyond. There is nothing much. There is some occult. They created certain things which are beautiful, no question. Not that they were totally ignorant, but the kings are always the most ignorant of the whole population. Always. They are the most egoistic, the crudest, most ruthless. They will become the kings. The gentle, beautiful ones never become kings. Rare is such a human being. Rare is such a culture that once in a way they saw a gentle, beautiful, enlightened king. Otherwise, they were always the crudest, grossest, cruelest and the most ruthless who became the kings. So, the pyramids were not built for every Egyptian. It was built only for the pharaohs, who were the kings who had a stupid belief that they will come back again and occupy the same old broken body. I don't know why such a wish. There are enough women in the world, you can get into their wombs and come back with a brand new body. I don't see. What is the point preserving the body, keeping your liver in a pot, keeping your heart in a pot? And now tourists are gazing at your heart and liver. People are dying to take a picture with the pharaoh's heart. Pyramid is a powerful form because it's preservative in nature.